good day, or good evening, wherever you are. Uh, there's something interesting about the light we surround ourselves with. Now, we're in an electrical soup, an electromagnetic soup with all of our technology, just the wiring in the house and so on. The wires, as charge runs through them, emit a field and energy and so on and so on. But just looking at the lighting in my house, I have everywhere I can full spectrum lights, uh, but I have one halogen lamp in here. And it's interesting that you'll notice on the one side of my face it seems to be yellow. And that's from the halogen light. If I turned it up bright at all, you'd see it get really yellow. And if you only have the regular incandescent lighting, or just which is, uh, airs on the side of the yellow, it has a lot of yellow in it. You won't notice this because it's what we're used to. It's what we grew up with, and we think it's just indoor lighting. And we know that the sun is bright, but we don't really see the difference until you get a full spectrum bulb and put it in a fixture with multiple bulbs, and then you'll be shocked. And what's fun is we don't normally see this either when we're recording, because there's a setting called white balance, and it goes back and forth between the yellow and the blue tinge. And I'll play with it here for a minute. And so it goes to the yellow, of course, and if we go to the opposite end, it's bluish. And so most of us have that set on auto. So what it will do is it will adjust for all of that yellow and make us look reasonably human. And my poor white balance thing gets quite mixed up when I'm using a combination of the full spectrum and the yellow. Anyhow, the full spectrum lighting is beautiful, and beneficial, and it costs, but if you can afford it, I recommend everybody have a look at it. Now, I have something from my reading in I Am That this morning that I wanted to share. And it's in the midst of a reading. This fellow, not everybody was totally friendly with Nisargadatta. Some of them were rather argumentative. And I think it's largely a measure of their frustration with trying to get what it is that he has to offer. And so I'll pick you up in the midst of it because I'm just sharing a small chunk. And so the guy is saying to Nisargadatta, he says, the moment you start talking about your world and my world as different and incompatible, you build a wall between us. Either we live in one world or your experience is of no use to us. And Nisargadatta says, well, of course we live in one world. Only I see it as it is while you don't. You see yourself in the world while I see the world in myself. To you, you get born and die, while to me, the world appears and disappears. Our world is real, but your view of it is not. There is no wall between us except the one built by you. There is nothing wrong with the senses. It is your imagination that misleads you. It covers up the world as it is with what you imagine it to be, something existing independently of you and yet closely following your inherited or acquired patterns. There is a deep contradiction in your attitude which you do not see and which is the cause of your sorrow. You cling to the idea that you were born into a world of pain and sorrow. I know that the world is a child of love, having its beginning, growth, and fulfillment in love, but I am beyond love even. good question here. The guy says, well, if you have created the world out of love, why is it so full of pain? And Nisargadatta says, you are right from the body's point of view, but you are not the body. You are the immensity and infinity of consciousness. Don't assume what is not true, and you will see things as I see them. Pain and pleasure, good and bad, right and wrong, these are relative terms and must not be taken absolutely. They are limited and temporary. I thought that was neat because earlier I was pondering something. I listen to my favorite lectures again and again. I really do enjoy them that way. And I don't have it up right now. But in the Primacy of Consciousness, there's a quote from, he's both a physicist, but he's also a professor of physics at the Max Planck Institute. And Peter Russell is quoting him as saying, now let me see if I can get it right. Well, I'll bring it up. No, I won't. I've closed the program. Matter is not made of matter at all. And that's what Peter Russell said. I'm forgetting the physicist's quote just now. But the reality is that the example given of an atom was if you blew up the nucleus to the size of a golf ball, you could put the golf ball in the middle of Yankee Stadium, and the electrons going roundabout would be like, I think he said grapes or peas in the stands, 300 yards away, I guess. And so there's nothing really there. We are truly living in a world of our imagination. It's just that we don't give our imagination credit for how powerful it truly is. There's nothing out there. The senses tell us that there is, but it's a virtual kind of reality that we've constructed here. Now, that's wonderful. In a way, it's neither here nor there because it's our experience of it that's real. And our challenge is when we identify too deeply with it. As long as we can stand back and be the watcher of the whole thing, we've got a much better shot. It's a better perspective to take. The more identified we get with it, the more limited and restricted our view of things is. And it becomes hard to imagine how it couldn't all be real. And yet, oh, I've got the quote. Matter is not made of matter at all. Matter is not made of matter. Everything is what we take it to be. So in a very real way, we can hop and skip over to Carl Jung and realize we're projecting. Our imagination is phenomenal. Very, very powerful. We are, with small letters, creator gods. I still hold belief in a prime creator, if you will, an isness, an infinite one. Someone, I think, spoke it well when saying cosmos, which is all the universe is everything. Cosmos is the body of God. And we're like atoms in that body. And in that body, everything is sentient. Where there is matter, there is consciousness. Maybe one requires the other. I don't want to do the chicken and egg thing. But I do like to wander in this for the blessing of the way it pretzels the mind. And a pretzeled mind is a wonderful thing to be in the presence of, because you see, it doesn't think it knows so much in that state. When we're in the state of thinking we know so much is actually when we're the most restricted. We think we're the fullest in that state. We know so much. Our knowledge is so great. But from the watcher's perspective, it can be seen that that is a most restrictive state when it comes to reality, to anything more ultimate. Now, ultimately, even the watcher will be transcended. Even the I am will be transcended. With Nisargadatta, even God will be transcended. I can't quite say, well, no, I'm not there, but I'm enjoying where I am, and I don't put it on a linear path, or I don't mean to. We slip back into these ways of identification with things due to our programming, and it's natural. But we're waking up in the midst of that programming. And so one of the things I'm doing is working on, whenever I catch any kind of self-talk going on that's critical, uh, accusing me of getting identified with things and limiting my consciousness, I'll pause to embrace and love myself and get rid of that. You know, it's very natural to be what and where you are. There's not a thing in the world wrong with it. The whole concept of doing something wrong is just like the whole concept of problem. These are false creations, and I'm weeding my garden of them. And so it's a joy. It's a real joy in the midst of whatever. And you know, I do so hesitate to say this, but I'm getting to where, we go through these cycles, and I think a lot of us are noticing it lately, where we're kind of overwhelmed by life, by the incoming energy, by whatever it is. For me, I've been able to correlate it with things like certain dates, the 10/28, the 11/11, that kind of thing. I wasn't watching so much before. As the hermit here, taking the clocks down from the walls, disconnecting from everything, I wasn't clocking against a calendar. Even my use of the Mayan calendar is only maybe 2 years old. So I wasn't correlating it with anything. It's possible, as I look at it now, though, to see that there is some correlation with astrology, with the Mayan calendar, with sun cycles. There's, I think it's called spaceweather.com, is a really great website because you can keep track of the solar wind and the coronal mass ejections, the CMEs, and they have great pictures of auroras and different things. I enjoy it, and I love it whenever we're in the midst of a solar wind and our magnetic field is pointing south, which enables more penetration of the solar energies. I love to go out and sunbathe, to stand in it. Of course, I'm in love with the sun. Go figure. No, don't figure. Go with what you're feeling. And don't let your mind edit you. Let's learn to love the self and get rid of these bad habits we've been infested with, like some kind of a virus. Let's love them right out of our aura. Now, the aura. is polluted by the electromagnetic soup we live in. There's a good bit of it that can't be escaped, such as the radio waves and the television, these things that are beamed through the atmosphere. I mean, I don't have a television or turn it on or have a satellite dish or anything, so I don't draw it directly here, but nonetheless, that stuff is in the air. But we've got a great deal that, we can make adjustments in our own house. And here's my suggestion for the day. No matter what you're using or listening to or taking advantage of during the day, how about in your bedroom at night, you have a look at things? It's really hard on us. We don't know how hard on us it is. It's hard on the aura. All of this, it's auric pollution. My suggestion is to get everything electronic, everything that's unplug everything around the bed. Now, if I'm using a clock, I have a little baby Ben, a wind-up clock. And so that's not emitting anything. You might think it's a little bit of noise pollution because of its little tick-tock, but that fades into the background pretty easily. At least around your bed, at least while you're sleeping at night, get the cell phone out of there. I mean, put it on the kitchen table or, in another room. Give yourself some peace to sleep. Unplug it all. Turn it off to the extent that you can. And I think if we just do this much for the body, much more healing can go on during the time of sleep than would otherwise. It's just a thought. Okay. We want to expand. We want to discover reality. We want to have restored to us all the abilities that exist as potentials right now. And what I'm finding is that by taking up the watch and observe stance, of course, I become more aware. And remember, you're just looking at yourself. You're just watching yourself as that self interacts with the world and things. You're just watching the self. Now, considering that the self is projecting the world, maybe you're watching more than that. But anyway, what I'm finding is that whenever I have a little feeling of discomfort about something, if I will pause and pay attention to that it's a message. I'm finding that these little feelings of either something feeling good or a feeling of some kind of discomfort are important. They're inner messages that we've been missing in the past. Now, we aren't anything like who and what we think we are. And so you've probably been noticing you're dropping a lot of things that you believed in, things that you believed were real. You have a shifting of the values of importance. What was once really important to you, you may find is nothing now, and once something that was once off your radar is now of magnificent importance. And so everything's shifting. It's shifting all around us. Part of what's going on is, now I'm going to call it the soul. It's just a word. It's not a very good word. But the soul, or the being that we are, has been in cocoon like a butterfly. And it's been a self-protective measure, largely. We are supremely sensitive. The real being that we are is ultra sensitive. is plugged into literally every atom in cosmos, all of creation, and is aware of that, and is getting readings off of everything, and can contain that and then some. Remember, you contain cosmos. It's not the other way around. You're not the body. And so as our beliefs shift, you'll find yourself becoming more sensitive, much more sensitive. This is going to result, if you enable it, if you allow it, if you have the courage, and I know that you do, you're a light being. You're not here if you don't have courage, period. You know, just the fact that you're here walking around in that body, you're tremendously courageous. So, not to pat yourself on the back or anything, but do recognize, let's stand in our power. In order to do this, we need to stay strictly to the now moment. More and more dropping the past, letting it go, not letting it limit us. That's what it's done up to now. And the mind is a creature of the past. That's what the mind is full of. If it hasn't happened yet, it's not in the mind, huh? So we're letting that particular perspective go. We're not getting rid of it. We're just not focusing on it. And another way to say it is we're focusing in heart. But in the now moment is the same thing, maybe more accurate. As we stick to the now, we find that we're sensitizing. We have all kinds of energy flows in the body that we're becoming aware of. Oh, there we go again. I forgot to unplug. And the ones we'll actually notice if we pay strict attention that some of these energy flows are more in the aura than they are in the body. It's a finer energy that's flowing through us. It's not necessarily physical. It actually feels electrical. And that's our clue. And so we're expanding out, even in our perceptions, even in our sensings. And that's great. More and more sensitivity. Okay, now, there'll be the yin and the yang. Someone sent me something yesterday. They put it to audio, but it was a transcript of an interview with one of the people that used to work at Dulce, New Mexico, underground in the base there. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's a combination human ET base where a lot of very, very unsavory things are going on. And this person had regular contacts with the ET beings there. There were grays and there were reptilians of different classes. There was a whole group of reptilians that were the workers. And then there were those that were in charge, and so on and so forth. And the man described what was going on before the big Delta raid on Dulce, where they came in basically with their machine guns and mowed everything and everybody down. There were some that, including him, that were rebelling against the treatment of the beings that were captured and in cages there. And some of them were human, and some of them were not, and things were being done to them and with them. And it's a long story. I'll go ahead and put a link here. I'm not suggesting that you listen to it. And this is why. as your sensitivity increases. When you hear something like this, you'll find yourself in agony. You'll be ripped and torn apart by what these beings are suffering. By their hopelessness and their fear. And just the torment. And so, my suggestion to myself is not to shut down on that. The natural feeling is to be upset. The natural feeling for me was to pray with all my heart and soul and to demand their release of spirit. The natural feeling is to be united with them in their pain. And you'll feel that. So be aware. Your new soul sensitivity won't necessarily be an easy thing to carry around with you. So I'm not trying to make you aware of what went on there. My desire is to make you aware of yourself so that you're very careful what you listen to and what you watch. Especially if you're in a situation where you're at work or where you're amongst people or where you wouldn't have the luxury of allowing your feelings and your tears, your anger, your whatever. Don't watch it then. I think we've got to allow the full range of feelings. Now, sometimes things come on me and I find that I'm crying, and it's in empathy with something or another. Oh my God, a bird flew into my window yesterday, and well, it's not that I came unglued, but it hurt. It hurt me tremendously. And you can laugh a bit with me. I was really upset with God that He didn't let me bring it back to life. I mean, if atoms aren't really there, if this is really my imagination, I'm beginning to demand the powers that go along with that way of looking and understanding. If we're creator gods, let's get to it. So, feelings of hopelessness are not real. They're of the mind. Everything is bright and beautiful when seen from heart perspective. Now, the little bird was fine. It was already free of its body. And, its body could have been healed. That's happened for me once before, where the bird had a broken neck and it healed and took off. But I don't know the magic of it yet. It's a hit or miss thing. There are going to be regular, everyday miracles, because the only reason there haven't been miracles is because we were programmed out of them. We've had so many understandings and lies programmed into us that we have self-limited based on that. And that's what we're getting rid of now. So, who knows? Maybe write it on a dozen sticky notes. There is no matter in matter at all. Whatever matter is made of, it's certainly not matter. Take something that pretzels your mind delightfully and that gives you new perspective. Write it down and put it in a bunch of places where you get the reminder so that you can keep pretzeling that brain, keep reminding yourself as we pretzel the brain, which means get it all twisted and tangled and not know what to do with itself, so it just flops down and surrender, you know, playing with the thing that we've given it, that pretzeled it. Meanwhile, you, the being, can go off and romp around in delight, absent the interference of the mind. Because in this new realm where we are, for a while, the mind can be looked at as interfering. We'll reach a point where it won't be so, because mind is very important in our perception of things. But we'll have such a different experience of mind, it won't even compare. And it has nothing to do with the brain. If you've ever had an OBE, you didn't take your brain with you, and yet you weren't mindless, you know? Or an NDE, a near-death experience. I mean, people have absolutely flatlined. They've been hooked up to monitors and it shows a flat line. The body's dead, the brain's dead. People have been dead for hours and come back and actually not only had no brain damage, but whatever cancers or whatever was wrong with the body is healed. Mellon Thomas Benedict is one of those. Now, it doesn't always work that way. Dannion Brinkley had a number of near-death experiences, and when he came back, there wasn't the healing. Lightning struck, and he lived through the recovery period from that. So there really aren't any generalizations that will work very well for you. Generalizations are the mind's way of trying to figure things out. And it's really good as we observe the self to be more and more in heart and less in mind. And maybe to have those little tricks that will pretzel the mind a bit and give us that freedom to roam. Am I done? I think so. We'll see. Good day.